Nicholas Harrington was the kind of man everyone admired, handsome, impeccably dressed, and so wealthy he seemed untouchable. Yet behind the polished smile and designer suits lay a storm of secrets. Whispers of a hidden mistress, hushed payments, and a lavish private jet only fueled suspicions. Meanwhile, his pregnant wife, Vivian, presented the perfect picture of elegance, but her gentle demeanor hid a fierce determination. When rumors morphed into revelations and heartbreak morphed into fury, Nicholas found himself caught between two formidable women. One held his heart with her forbidden allure. The other held his future in her hands, and she wouldn't hesitate to destroy him. Nicholas Harrington was the name on everyone's lips in Manhattan's high society. He'd been splashed across the pages of Forbes for amassing an empire of tech startups merged under his flagship company, Harrington Innovations. Stocks soared whenever he smiled at the camera, and interviews with him became the stuff of legend. Indeed, Nicholas possessed an air of unflappable confidence, arguably his greatest asset. Yet behind the glitz, he nursed a sense of emptiness he seldom acknowledged. Only 3 years ago, he had swept Vivian Chambers, now Vivian Harrington, off her feet. They wed at St. Patrick's Cathedral, surrounded by luminaries like Warren Buffett and Anna Wintour. The tabloids called it the wedding of the year, and it looked from the outside like a fairy tale. But as Nicholas stood in his corner office overlooking Central Park on a sultry June afternoon, he couldn't help feeling an undercurrent of panic. Every corner he turned, there seemed to be a fresh rumor, a new swirl of gossip that threatened to dislodge him from his throne. He had used his wealth to hush many controversies, paying hush money to employees or settling disputes with out-of-court deals. But this was different. Eliana Stone was the name on his mind. She was a rising socialite, best known for being seen on the arms of powerful men from time to time. Years younger than Nicholas, she was seductive, confident, and unrelentingly ambitious. In a world where everyone was chasing the next best connection, Eliana cultivated powerful alliances like collecting jewelry, shiny precious and carefully curated. He recalled the night they met under the shimmering chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel. He was hosting a fundraising gala in collaboration with the Real Impact Foundation, one that Michael Bloomberg and even Leonardo DiCaprio had RSVP'd to. Eliana arrived in a midnight blue gown, turning heads as though an invisible spotlight illuminated her every step. When she approached Nicholas with a fluted champagne glass and a half smile, the spark of desire caught him off guard. Flattery ensued, laughter flowed. By the end of the evening, she had charmed him into exchanging private phone numbers, something he had never done so openly before. That first encounter led to clandestine lunches at Michelin-starred restaurants and stolen nights in penthouse suites. All of it, Nicholas believed, was under meticulous secrecy. He had relied on his power and money to safeguard his indiscretions, ensuring that not a whisper reached Vivian's ears. Except now rumors about a mystery woman had leaked into the tabloids. His nerve endings were on fire. He couldn't let it spiral into scandal. Little did he know the scandal would soon become the least of his worries. The private jet was only the beginning. And as far as Vivian was concerned, her husband's name might soon be etched in the court dockets of the New York Supreme Court. Vivian Harrington was as poised as she was intelligent. A Harvard graduate who once studied under the tutelage of Dr. Elizabeth Warren. Vivian had her own promising career in international law before dedicating herself to philanthropic work. She was the woman who believed in justice and fairness, raising millions for global women's education initiatives through her foundation. Yet inside the walls of her Park Avenue penthouse, she increasingly felt like a naive girl in a dangerous adult world. That morning, Vivian quietly sipped on her specially blended herbal tea, recommended by her prenatal physician, Dr. Candace Lynn, at Mount Sinai. Yes, she was pregnant 3 months along. A child was all she had dreamed of. For the last year, an addition to the home she and Nicholas were supposed to build together. Instead, she sensed him drifting day by day. She tried not to let insecurities get the better of her. Nicholas was a busy man, an empire builder with thousands of employees relying on him. She told herself that his stress was natural. But when Vivian discovered a suspicious envelope tucked into his desk, her illusions began to crack. Inside was an invoice from a private aviation company referencing a Gulfstream G650 acquisition. The aircraft cost a staggering sum, tens of millions of dollars, and the name on the delivery address was not Harrington Innovations, nor Nicholas Harrington. It read, Eliana Stone. At first, Vivian's mind refused to process the implications. A private jet in another woman's name. Perhaps it was a business arrangement or a philanthropic gesture for a charitable venture. She fought to rationalize it. But the pit in her stomach deepened when she remembered her girlfriends whispering at a recent luncheon about a high-profile mistress rumored to be kept by a certain Manhattan billionaire. Nicholas had brushed off those rumors with a confident laugh, insisting they were about some fool with more money than sense. Over the next several days, her morning sickness became more severe, compounded by the mental anguish swirling within her. Confusion threatened to knock her off balance. She remembered Nicholas once promising her the world I will go to any length to keep you happy, he had said on their honeymoon in Santorini. Vivian reached out for help in the only way she trusted. She called her best friend and confidant, Dr. Elise Parker, a renowned psychologist. Elise provided a listening ear, but warned her to gather more information before confronting Nicholas. After all, if he was truly funneling money into a mistress, there might be deeper layers at play. Vivian tried to calm herself, but that single invoice refused to disappear from her thoughts. She spent nights thinking of the unborn child within her, a child who deserved a stable family, a healthy father, and a mother who wasn't paralyzed by betrayal. As the seeds of suspicion took root, her resolve hardened. She would not be deceived. Vivian Harrington was about to embark on a path that would shake her marriage to its core. Eliana Stone didn't see herself as a mistress, let alone a kept woman. To her, that term was archaic, reserved for women lacking agency. Eliana considered herself a strategist. A Denver native, she had relocated to New York in her early 20s, chasing a career in fashion design. Yet she quickly discovered that her real talent lay in navigating social circles. She was bright, persuasive, and adept at reading a room. Once she found her way into Manhattan's elite gatherings, she leveraged her beauty and wit to forge relationships with the city's movers and shakers. On one particularly humid evening, Eliana stepped out of a black Escalade in front of a private hangar at Teterboro Airport. The manager of the facility, Richard Combs, an old friend she had once dated, casually greeted her with a wary smile. He handed her a set of documents referencing the brand-new Gulfstream G650 that unbelievably Nicholas Harrington had purchased in her name. Eliana was no stranger to lavish gifts. She had once been flown to Dubai by a European royal who wanted nothing more than her presence on his yacht. She had a closet full of designer items bestowed by admirers, but this private jet was on another level. Her heart hammered as she read the certificate of ownership. Nicholas had confided in her that he wanted to ensure her comfort for traveling to philanthropic events and business summits abroad. But Eliana wasn't naive. She knew this was more than a thoughtful gesture. It was Nicholas's attempt to keep her tethered to him away from prying eyes of the city. The jet was both a bribe and a fortress guaranteeing her silence and loyalty. Yet part of Eliana recoiled. She had never planned to become so intricately tied to any single man, especially not one with a pregnant wife. The tabloids had begun sniffing around, and she feared the blowback that might fall on her if she found herself in the crosshairs of Vivian Harrington's circle. Vivian was formidable. Harvard-educated philanthropic, loved by Manhattan's elite. One misstep, Eliana reasoned, and it could be game over for her carefully curated image. Eliana contemplated her next steps. If Nicholas was that desperate to hide her from the public eye, was there something bigger behind the scenes? She had heard rumors about SEC investigations into a few of his acquisitions. Had she tied her fate to a man with looming legal troubles? She texted Nicholas a simple message: "We need to talk." Eliana was determined to control the narrative, even if it meant confronting him about the real reasons behind this extravagant gift. Because if there was one thing she had learned in New York, it was that knowledge equaled power. And she would not hesitate to use that power, no matter whose heart got broken in the process. Nicholas arrived home late, nerves fraying like the edges of a tattered flag. The doorman gave him a polite nod, but Nicholas barely registered it as he stepped into the lavish marble lobby of his Park Avenue building. It was nearly midnight, and he expected Vivian to be asleep. What he didn't expect was to find her waiting in the living room. Lights dimmed silhouette, rigid against the city lights, beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Vivian. He tried for a gentle tone, but his voice trembled. There was a sense of dread prickling the air. She slowly turned, revealing tear-streaked cheeks. She had a file in her hands, a sheaf of papers. Nicholas recognized them almost immediately. They were documents from the private aviation deal. His pulse accelerated. "Is there something you want to tell me?" "Nicholas." Her voice was steady, but the heartbreak in her eyes was impossible to miss. He inhaled sharply, trying to form a coherent response. "Vivian, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because it looks like you purchased a multi-million-dollar jet for a woman named Eliana Stone." Nicholas raked a hand through his hair, searching for a plausible explanation. But the well of excuses ran dry. He tried to spin a tale about business alliances and investor perks, but every word felt hollow the moment it left his lips. Vivian let him speak, her gaze never wavering. She cut in. "Do you think I'm naive? I know who she is, Nicholas. The tabloids are filled with her name these days." She laid a hand protectively over her stomach. "Is this the man you want to be when our child is born?" His shame curdled into something else. Defensiveness, perhaps. "I never asked for any of this," he muttered, voice tight. "It just happened." Vivian's composure shattered. "Things don't just happen, Nicholas. You've built an empire out of your ability to control events, so don't tell me you suddenly lost control." She waved the documents in his face. "We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. Our child's future. Our marriage." She turned away as though she couldn't bear to look at him any longer. "You need to decide, Nicholas. Decide what you want before I walk out of here." Staggered by the ultimatum, Nicholas tried to approach her, arms outstretched. She recoiled. "Don't," she warned. "Just don't." As he watched the woman he once adored disappear behind the bedroom door, Nicholas realized that his well-maintained double life was crashing into pieces. In that moment, it dawned on him what he feared most was not losing money or reputation, It was losing Vivian and the life they had planned for their unborn child. While Nicholas scrambled to pacify Vivian and keep Eliana in check, the corporate underbelly of Harrington Innovations was churning. A federal probe long rumored among financial circles was heating up. The Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) had launched a quiet investigation into possible insider trading and irregularities in the company's recent mergers. At first, it was a mere whisper, circulating among high-powered attorneys at Cravath, Swaine and Moore, one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. But soon, Nicholas's top legal advisor Henry Caldwell confirmed that the whispers were real. Nicholas had always regarded Henry as a loyal strategist, a bulldog in court who could fend off anything. But even Henry seemed uneasy at the magnitude of the inquiries. Nicholas sat in his corner office gazing out at the skyline as Henry laid down the facts. They're sniffing around the TechCore acquisition from last year, and the deal with Agnelli Biotech. They claim a tip-off about false financial disclosures. Nicholas felt a pang of paranoia. Could these investigations connect to the hush money he'd funneled to secure Eliana's silence, or the extravagant private jet purchase that was linked on paper to Stone Enterprises, one of her front companies? He had always believed that the pillars of his empire were unshakable, built on legitimate business moves. Yet, in an era of eagle-eyed regulators, no slip went unnoticed. And with the tabloids abuzz over his alleged affair, he worried that a scandal might offer investigators the perfect opening to dig deeper. The SEC was known to exploit personal controversies to pressure executives into cooperation or confessions. Henry Caldwell exhaled and tossed a folder on Nicholas's desk. "We need to distance any questionable transactions from your personal finances. Make sure the board has your back, or we risk a revolt once this becomes public." The notion of a board revolt rattled Nicholas. He had cultivated an image of supreme leadership at Harrington Innovations. But if the directors began to fear for their own reputations, loyalty could vanish. In a twist of timing, Eliana chose that evening to call him in a frantic state. She had been summoned for questioning by the SEC to clarify her involvement in Stone Enterprises. Eliana sounded panicked. "Nicholas, they're asking about the plane. They want to know if Stone Enterprises has any stake in Harrington Innovations. I'm not going down for this." Nicholas clenched his jaw. "Keep calm. I'll handle it," he said, though he had no immediate plan. Beneath the shimmering surface of his life, the ground was quaking. Between a pregnant wife who threatened to leave him a mistress who could crumble under investigative pressure and a looming federal probe, Nicholas sensed the perfect storm gathering strength. If he didn't move swiftly, everything he'd built and everyone he cared about might be swept away. Vivian noticed a distinct shift in the atmosphere at charity luncheons and social gatherings. Friends who once flocked to her side now had a certain guardedness in their eyes. She couldn't decide if it was pity judgment or both. As rumors spread about Nicholas's affair, sympathy for the pregnant wife was overshadowed by the thrill of gossip. Even her long-time confidant, Serena Van Doren, heiress to a real estate fortune, seemed more interested in gleaning scandalous details than offering emotional support. But not everyone turned away. An unexpected ally emerged in the form of Tristan Zhao, a brilliant defense attorney from Cravath, Swaine and Moore, who happened to be a distant cousin of Vivian's. When he caught wind of the SEC's investigation and the swirling allegations against Nicholas, Tristan reached out privately. "Vivian, I'm here if you need help. Nicholas might be my firm's client, but your family." Vivian was taken aback. She appreciated the gesture, but also recognized the delicate position Tristan was in. Representing Harrington Innovations meant he had to safeguard Nicholas's interests. Yet Tristan made it clear. "My loyalty is to truth and justice. If you're in legal jeopardy, or if you suspect wrongdoing that affects you and your child, I'll point you to the right resources." Meanwhile, Eliana found herself cornered by an unexpected visitor, Frederick Klein, a tabloid journalist known for his cutthroat tactics. He showed up at her penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental, brandishing a notepad and a cunning smile. "Miss Stone, I have reason to believe you're at the center of the biggest scandal in Manhattan. Care to comment?" Her first instinct was to slam the door. But Frederick was persistent, offering a tantalizing deal. If she gave him an exclusive, he'd publish a sympathetic portrayal of her. "We can paint you as the young entrepreneur caught in Nicholas Harrington's web," he offered slyly. Eliana felt the sting of humiliation. She had been too confident, believing she could handle the entanglement. But Nicholas had drawn her into legal complications that threatened her business reputation. Part of her wanted to expose his secrets, to let the world see him for who he truly was. Another part feared losing the lavish lifestyle he had provided, especially the prized private jet. In a smoky midtown bar, Henry Caldwell met with board members from Harrington Innovations, hoping to shore up support for Nicholas. But he found dissent instead. They worried about stock prices plummeting if the CEO was entangled in an affair and an SEC investigation simultaneously. Some murmured about forcing a temporary leave of absence. Others, more calculating, considered if they should cut ties entirely for the sake of the company's public image. Little by little, Nicholas's fortress of influence was being assailed from every angle. Allies were scarce, enemies multiplying. And though he tried to manage each crisis, he was finding it impossible to keep all the plates spinning. Everyone had a stake in the game, and the stakes were rising by the hour. As summer draped New York in a cloak of heat, the chill of tension inside the Harrington penthouse grew increasingly palpable. Vivian's pregnancy advanced her belly, gently rounding a testament to a future she once believed would be bright. Now it served as a constant reminder that life moved forward no matter the turmoil. One evening, Vivian heard the door creak open. Nicholas returned, looking more haggard than she'd ever seen him. He loosened his tie and poured himself a tumbler of scotch, a habit he'd resumed after years of sobriety from his college days at Stanford. She watched silently from across the living room, waiting for him to speak. The conversation that followed was as raw as the city's summer air. Nicholas confessed, or at least tried to. He admitted that yes, he had been involved with Eliana, but he insisted it was just a distraction that spiraled out of control. He claimed he ended it weeks ago, but the private jet had already been purchased, an irrevocable transaction. Vivian glared at him. "You think that's what this is about? A fling? A toy you bought her? What about the possibility of legal consequences, Nicholas? Don't you see how vulnerable this makes us?" He grimaced, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I never intended for any of this. The SEC is digging into my deals and Eliana's name came up. Now she's threatening to speak to reporters." He paused, voice wavering. "I'm terrified, Vivian, of losing you, losing the company, losing everything." Vivian felt a pang of sadness for the man she once admired, but anger roiled within her too. She approached him, eyes fierce. "I've decided to retain my own attorney, Nicholas. If this escalates, I won't be blindsided. Tristan Zhao has offered to guide me to a top family law specialist." Nicholas's face contorted. "You'd do that to me? Take legal action while I'm already under investigation? Don't you dare act like the victim here." Vivian shot back, her voice quiet but resolute. "I'm pregnant with our child. If you jeopardize everything with your recklessness, I need to ensure we're protected. I won't stand by, powerless." A heavy silence descended. Finally, Nicholas set his glass down with a trembling hand. "What do you want from me?" Vivian's eyes brimmed with tears. "I want the truth. I want you to own up to your actions, publicly, if necessary. And if that means stepping down from Harrington Innovations to preserve the company you built, then so be it." She took a slow breath, hand resting gently on her belly. "Decide, Nicholas. Decide whether you're going to run from this or face it. But know that if you choose deceit again, I will protect myself and our child, no matter the cost." In that moment, Nicholas realized that mere apologies would no longer suffice. The ultimatum was clear: salvage his integrity, or lose not just his wife and child, but also his very freedom. When the story about Nicholas Harrington's alleged affair and the mysterious private jet finally hit the tabloids, it broke like a thunderclap across social media. Frederick Klein's publication headlined it as "Billionaire Lover's Air Affair. Harrington's Jet for His Secret Mistress." The accompanying photos of Eliana Stone stepping out of the sleek Gulfstream G650 were enough to set tongues wagging across the country. Nicholas's phone erupted with calls from board members, investors, and old friends demanding explanations. The PR department at Harrington Innovations scrambled to craft a statement. Vivian braced herself for the paparazzi who staked out the building lobby in hopes of snapping pictures of the devastated wife. Even Serena Van Doren called equal parts sympathetic and fascinated by the unfolding chaos. Amid the storm, Nicholas retreated to his home office, pacing like a caged animal. Eliana's betrayal stung. She had effectively confirmed the existence of the jet, if not the entire affair. He had tried to soothe her panic about the SEC, but in doing so he'd only made her more aware of how precarious his position was. With her new leverage, Eliana seemed ready to play all her cards. Desperate to salvage what remained, Nicholas arranged a secret meeting with Eliana at a discreet suite in the Four Seasons. When she arrived, her posture was tense, her expression wary. He tried to plead with her. "Eliana, why did you let it go public?" Her laugh was hollow. "Don't be naive. That reporter cornered me. My silence was worthless once the SEC got involved. Are you aware they're asking for my financial records? If I end up indicted for fraud because of you, I'll sing like a canary." Nicholas clenched his jaw. "I never intended for you to be implicated. Let me handle the SEC. I'll ensure your name is cleared. But please keep the media out of it. I'm trying to protect my wife and child." She eyed him skeptically. "You never told me Vivian was pregnant." Her voice held a hint of regret. "Had I known, I might have walked away sooner." Nicholas felt a surge of anger at her self-pity. "Eliana, this has gone too far. The board is ready to oust me. My marriage is hanging by a thread. Just name your price for your cooperation. I'll pay whatever it takes." She raised an eyebrow. "You think money solves everything. But you've built a reputation on power moves. Now the press wants blood, and the SEC wants to take down a big fish. If you can't offer me guaranteed safety, then my best bet is to protect myself by cutting a deal with them and with the media." He stood there, words choking in his throat. Eliana turned to leave, stiletto heels clicking on the polished floor. The door closed softly, and Nicholas was left staring at his reflection in the window. The private jet that once symbolized his dominion had now become a millstone around his neck, dragging him and everyone around him into scandal and potential ruin. Outside of the Manhattan social bubble, Vivian found respite in the quiet spaces of her childhood home in Connecticut. She often visited her mother, Catherine Chambers, a retired professor, who lived in an ivy-covered cottage near Hartford. Sitting on the back porch, Vivian could almost pretend she was a little girl again, sipping lemonade while the summer breeze rustled the trees. But the illusion was fleeting. Her mind was consumed by the crisis unfolding back in Manhattan. She had just seen the tabloid headlines about the private jet. There was no escaping the humiliation that her husband's betrayal had become national fodder. Catherine sipped her tea, brow furrowed as she studied her daughter. You know, sometimes men think with their pride and lose sight of their vows. I'm not saying this to excuse Nicholas's behavior. But are you sure you're ready for a legal battle that could get ugly? Vivian swallowed hard. I can't just sit back and let him ruin everything we built. He put me and this baby in jeopardy with his reckless actions, and the SEC investigation might expose more. I'm afraid of how deep this goes. Her mother reached over, covering Vivian's hand with her own. Then you must protect yourself and protect your child. The question is, do you still love him enough to give him a chance to make things right? Vivian's eyes welled up. Did she still love Nicholas? A part of her. Did she love the man who once wrote her poetry, who planned lavish surprise getaways just to see her smile? But that man seemed so distant now, overshadowed by the cunning businessman entangled with Eliana Stone. That afternoon she spoke with Tristan Zhao by phone. He laid out her options file for a legal separation, pursue a divorce, or demand that Nicholas sign an agreement giving her majority custody and financial security should the SEC investigation escalate. Tristan's advice was clear. Vivian, you hold more power than you think. Nicholas stands to lose far more if you take him to court. The board won't want a scandal-ridden CEO. If you choose to, you can force concessions out of him. Vivian felt a swirl of conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, guilt, sorrow. Catherine's question echoed in her mind. Do you still love him enough to let him fix this? The straightforward answer was that she wasn't sure. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: she would not remain silent. She would not let Nicholas overshadow her rights or her child's future. As evening fell, she made a decision. She would return to Manhattan and confront Nicholas face to face with a proposed settlement. If he was serious about protecting their family, he would meet her terms. Otherwise, she would walk away no matter the cost. She would not be another powerless wife, overshadowed by a wealthy husband's misdeeds. The crossroads was set, and Vivian intended to choose her path with eyes wide open. Nicholas sat at the mahogany dining table, the remnants of a half-eaten dinner growing cold. His appetite had vanished hours ago, replaced by a consuming dread of what might happen next. Time felt suspended the flickering city lights beyond the penthouse windows, casting dancing shadows against the walls. Suddenly the elevator chimed and Vivian stepped into the foyer. Her expression was resolute, not the tearful vulnerability he'd grown accustomed to. Nicholas rose. Vivian, he began, voice tentative. She raised a hand to stop him. We don't need to rehash the affair details. I'm here for a different reason. She pulled a slim folder from her handbag and placed it on the table. I had Tristan draft this. Nicholas swallowed. What is it? A provisional settlement agreement. She answered, her tone as cool as a lawyer delivering a verdict. It spells out what happens if I file for legal separation or divorce, particularly regarding custody of our child's spousal support and my share of your assets. He opened the folder and skimmed the pages, eyes widening at some of the clauses. You want the penthouse and a substantial share of Harrington Innovations stock. Vivian, this is... You owe me that much, Nicholas, she cut in. I supported you for years, sacrificed my career, and believed in you without question. If you tarnish our marriage and jeopardize our child's future, this is the price you'll pay. He flinched at the coldness in her voice. I understand your anger, but you must see this from my perspective. My company is under investigation. If I sign this, the board will see it as a sign of instability. The stock value will drop. It could spark a panic. Vivian's eyes flickered with conflicting emotions. That's not my fault. You created this mess. She gently placed a hand on her pregnant belly. I'm thinking about our child's security. If you're indicted or forced to resign, you'll lose so much. I can't risk being left with nothing. Nicholas breathed deeply. Slowly, he closed the folder and ran his hand across the cover. If I sign this, will you give me a chance to fix things? Vivian hesitated, her eyes searching his. That depends on your actions. You need to clear the air with the SEC, manage Eliana, and publicly acknowledge our marriage. No more secrets, no more hush-hush deals. He nodded, tears brimming at the corners of his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes, he whispered. Without another word, Vivian turned and walked to the spare bedroom. Once she was gone, Nicholas sat there, the weight of the agreement seeming to press down like an anvil. Signing it might mean salvaging some form of trust. Refusing it might lead to a costly and humiliating court battle. Either way, his fate now lay in the fine print of that folder and in the unwavering resolve of the wife he had wronged. The air outside the SEC's New York regional office was thick with August heat and anticipation. A line of reporters had already begun to form across the street, cameras aimed like rifles, ready to capture the slow dismantling of a reputation once thought untouchable. Nicholas Harrington emerged from the back seat of a sleek black town car, flanked by his chief legal counsel Henry Caldwell and 2 junior associates. Dressed in a charcoal grey suit, every inch of him appeared immaculate, except for the strain around his eyes. It was the look of a man who had spent too many nights staring at the ceiling, wondering when everything would fall apart. Inside the hearing room was antiseptic windowless and devoid of comfort. At the long table sat a panel of SEC officials, each with folders thick enough to suggest they already knew more than they were letting on. Among them was Grace Lee, the lead investigator, sharp, unblinking, and known for unearthing white-collar deception with surgical precision. Nicholas took his seat. A court reporter adjusted her machine. A bottle of water was placed in front of him. He didn't touch it. The oath was simple. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Nicholas replied, though the words caught briefly in his throat. Henry began speaking first in a calm, strategic tone. My client is here in full cooperation. While recent headlines have painted a dramatic picture, we are confident this testimony will clarify misunderstandings. Mr. Harrington has nothing to hide. But Grace Lee wasn't here for Grace. She leaned forward, her voice steady and clipped. Mr. Harrington, can you explain the series of wire transfers from your personal trust to Stone Enterprises? Several occurred within 48 hours of your company's major acquisition announcements. Would you categorize those as gifts, loans? Or something else? Nicholas swallowed hard. They were loans. Personal investments to support Ms. Stone's business initiatives. Business initiatives, Grace repeated, tapping her pen. Interesting, considering Stone Enterprises doesn't appear to operate any physical locations or provide services. Its listed address traces to a mail forwarding center in Soho. Nicholas felt heat rising under his collar. Eliana Ms. Stone was in the process of launching a non-profit. I believed in her cause. Grace raised an eyebrow. And the Gulfstream G650, purchased via subsidiaries connected to Harrington Innovations, transferred into her name. Does that fall under your philanthropic beliefs as well? The room went quiet. Even Henry seemed to pause. Nicholas tried to recover. That was a miscalculation. It was meant to facilitate her travel to charity events overseas. There was no intention of misleading the board or regulators. The junior investigator next to Grace leaned in and flipped a document toward the panel. We have emails between Ms. Stone and one of your assistants discussing keeping things off the books. How do you explain that Nicholas's hands clenched under the table? I never authorized that language. If it happened, it was a mistake by a staff member. The air tightened. Grace didn't blink. So in summary, you claim the funds, the plane, and the shell companies all exist as coincidences, and the timing around stock volatility mere chance. Nicholas faltered. Yes. Coincidence. Grace sat back, satisfied with the discomfort her silence produced. Then she leaned in one last time. Mr. Harrington, this is not a trial yet. But you should understand, we are prepared to pursue further action. If we discover that your personal relationships were used to conceal material financial transactions, you won't just be explaining yourself in this room. You'll be doing so under federal indictment. The words hit like a gavel. When the questioning ended, Nicholas stepped into the hallway, drenched in sweat beneath his polished suit. Henry walked beside him, jaw tight. Nothing's definitive yet, Henry muttered. But they're closing in. We need to get ahead of this fast. Outside, the sunlight was blinding. Flash bulbs erupted the second Nicholas appeared. Reporters shouted questions, but he kept walking, expression unreadable. And then, just beyond the press line, he saw her. Vivian stood quietly, her coat folded neatly over her rounded belly. Her eyes met his, not with hatred, not with pity, but something colder clarity. The kind that no lie could pierce. She nodded almost imperceptibly, then turned and left. Nicholas didn't call after her. He couldn't, because at that moment, he understood he hadn't just been under oath in front of the SEC. He'd been under oath before the woman whose trust he had shattered, and in both courts, he was failing. The day Manhattan Family Court summoned the Harringtons, the city seemed to mirror their turmoil, overcast skies, cold drizzle, and a wind that cut through coats and certainty alike. Vivian sat in the back seat of her legal counsel's car, hands gently folded over her rounded belly, her heart steady, but her mind a whirlwind. In her tailored navy dress and cream coat, she looked the part of elegance, but underneath, she was bracing for war. Nicholas, on the other hand, arrived separately with his legal team. Face drawn, suit pressed but soaked at the edges from the rain. The once revered tech mogul now moved with the stiffness of a man walking into his own reckoning. His wife, the woman who once toasted his Forbes cover in Santorini, was now his opponent in a courtroom that would define more than custody. It would define character. Cameras flashed in the foyer. The tabloids had already christened the event the billionaire marriage collapse of the year. Inside, fluorescent lights and the low murmur of clerks filled the courtroom with a sterile judicial hush. But beneath the procedural tone, hearts thundered. Judge Wallace, known for his impartial but razor-sharp mind, presided from the bench, glancing between the two parties with practiced observation. Vivian rose first. At her side stood Tristan Zhao, her family attorney, sharp as ever, his calm anchoring her presence. "Your Honor," Tristan began, "we are here today because my client, Mrs. Vivian Harrington, must safeguard not only her unborn child's well-being, but also her own future in light of serious allegations surrounding Mr. Harrington's conduct. These are not just emotional breaches. They carry financial, legal, and reputational consequences. He presented exhibits, the Gulfstream G650 invoice wire transfers to Eliana's companies, and press clippings outlining SEC scrutiny. This is not a case of simple infidelity, he emphasized. This is a man whose recklessness threatens the foundation of a family. Then Vivian took the stand. She didn't shake. Her voice, though soft, cut through the courtroom like crystal. "I am not here to punish Nicholas," she said, "but to protect my child. I stood by him as he built an empire. I turned down board seats and job offers to raise a family with him. But when I discovered the jet, the lies, the secrets woven into our finances, I realized I could no longer trust him to put family first." She paused, one hand resting on her belly. "This child will be born into a storm I did not create. And so I ask this court for separation custody and clear boundaries. I need to know I'm not tied to a future of consequences that I didn't choose." Nicholas, listening, felt something tear quietly within. Vivian wasn't attacking him. She was grieving him. Grieving the man he used to be. And somehow that hurt more than any insult could. His attorney, Deborah Montague, rose, her tone polished but defensive. "Mr. Harrington has not been charged with any crimes. He has taken responsibility and signed a provisional agreement to provide for his wife and unborn child. He regrets the mistakes he made, and he is committed to restoring stability." When Nicholas took the stand, his usual confidence faltered. "I've made catastrophic decisions," he admitted. "I lost my way. I hurt the woman who believed in me more than anyone. But I love my family. I love my wife. I want to be a father. Please don't punish my child for my failures." He looked directly at Vivian, eyes glossy with unspoken regret. "Vivian, if there's anything left to save, I'll fight for it." But Judge Wallace had heard enough. He removed his glasses slowly and addressed the court in a measured tone. "This court does not render decisions based on emotion alone, but on impact, risk, and precedent. While Mr. Harrington has not yet been criminally charged, the court finds the financial irregularities troubling, especially the use of marital assets for extramarital endeavors." He looked at Vivian. "Given your condition and the uncertainty surrounding Mr. Harrington's legal future, the court grants your petition for separation with sole custody, awarded until further review." A collective breath left the courtroom. However, the judge continued, "I order a mediation period before any permanent divorce is granted. Both parties are encouraged to seek counseling for the sake of their child, if not for reconciliation." The gavel fell with finality. Outside, flashbulbs exploded. Nicholas exited with his head down. Vivian walked out, composed, escorted by Tristan, her hand instinctively cradling her stomach. That night, Nicholas returned to an empty penthouse, silence pressing down like a judgment of its own. Vivian, meanwhile, sat by her mother's side in Connecticut, watching news coverage she never asked for. She had won the hearing, but not without cost. And somewhere deep within both of them, the truth lingered like an echo power may buy silence, but it can never buy back trust. And the court, cold and impartial, had just made that truth official. Autumn descended on Manhattan with a crisp chill. Leaves in Central Park turned burnished gold a stark contrast to the somber mood that enveloped Nicholas. The separation hearing had concluded, leaving him in a purgatory of legal limbo. Harrington Innovations' board pressured him to step down as CEO temporarily until the investigations concluded. Eliana Stone had vanished from public sight, rumored to be negotiating a quiet settlement of her own with the SEC. In the midst of this maelstrom, Vivian's pregnancy progressed. She was nearing her 7th month, glowing despite the emotional upheaval. One day she agreed to meet Nicholas at a neutral location, her lawyer's conference room, under the pretense of finalizing some financial details. Nicholas arrived early, heart-pounding, half hoping for a chance at honest conversation. When Vivian entered, her expression was guarded but not hostile. They sat at a polished wooden table, a fruit platter and water glasses placed between them. Lawyers hovered in the background. But Tristan made an excuse to step out, leaving them momentarily alone. Nicholas mustered his courage. "Vivian, I know I can't undo what's happened, but I still believe we can be a family for our child." She studied him quietly, absent-mindedly, placing a hand on her belly. "Nicholas, I've been to the doctor. The baby's healthy. That's the most important thing to me. I won't let anything threaten that." Her voice was tinged with sadness. "But as for us, I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were. Your affair, the secrets, they're scars that might never fully heal." He felt tears prick at his eyes. "I'll do anything, Vivian. I'll sign any agreement you want. I'll cooperate fully with the SEC. Step down from the company for good if necessary. I don't want to lose you." Her eyes glistened, but she remained composed. "You've already lost part of me, Nicholas, and I don't say that to be cruel. It's the reality. But you might be able to earn back my respect if you can prove you've truly changed." Just then, Tristan stepped back into the room with a gentle knock. "I'm sorry to interrupt. The final paperwork is ready." Vivian sighed, stood up, and walked toward the door, but not before pausing. She turned to Nicholas, her voice soft yet resolute. "Focus on resolving your legal issues. Get the help you need. Let's bring this child into a world without fear. Then maybe we'll see if there's a chance for us." As she left, Nicholas clutched the edge of the table, emotions crashing over him in waves. He was neither free nor entirely condemned. The fate of his marriage, his reputation, and even his future as a father rested on his ability to atone for past sins. For now, he would stand on the precipice of redemption, heart-pounding, hoping that one day the scales might tip in his favor, and that Vivian would find it in her heart to forgive him. 6 months later, a hush fell over a pristine maternity suite at Mount Sinai Hospital. It was the day that would rewrite the destinies of Nicholas and Vivian Harrington. Vivian was in labor, surrounded by an aura of calm determination. Tristan and Catherine, her mother, stood by for moral support. After hours of tense waiting, Nicholas arrived. He looked visibly drained, but resolute. The SEC investigation had finally concluded, leading to a negotiated settlement in which Nicholas admitted to minor infractions, but avoided criminal charges. He had also resigned from Harrington Innovations, relinquishing his CEO title in exchange for a consultancy role. The board accepted his departure as a necessary act to restore the company's public image. Though Vivian had held firm on their legal separation, she had allowed Nicholas the opportunity to be present for the birth of their child. The baby's arrival brought a fragile sense of hope, albeit tinted with the knowledge of everything that had transpired. In the hallway, Nicholas paced anxiously, memories flooding his mind, his first date with Vivian, their wedding day, the day he discovered she was pregnant. Each memory was a bittersweet reminder of how far they had strayed from their dream. The door to the maternity suite opened, and Catherine beckoned him inside. Vivian lay reclined, sweat on her brow, but her face softened when she saw him. "The baby's almost here," she said, breathless between contractions. Nicholas rushed to her side, gently taking her hand. "You're doing amazing," he whispered, voice trembling with emotion. She squeezed his hand, and for a moment, all grudges, all scandals, seemed to dissolve in the face of new life. It happened in a rush, the final push, the cry of a newborn echoing in the room. A son 8 pounds of possibility. A hush fell as the medical staff placed the baby in Vivian's arms. Nicholas felt tears spill down his cheeks. Vivian's face lit up with a radiant glow he hadn't seen in a long time. When a nurse asks if the father wanted to hold the baby, Vivian glanced at Nicholas and nodded. Carefully, he cradled his son, a tiny, fragile being who knew nothing of private jets or SEC hearings, nothing of betrayal or heartbreak. In that moment, Nicholas felt humbled, awed, and overwhelmed by the gravity of fatherhood. Later, when the baby was cleaned and swaddled, and Vivian rested Nicholas, stepped into the quiet hallway. His phone buzzed an email from Tristan's office, finalizing details of the separation agreement. The terms were generous to Vivian, as they should be. Nicholas had no regrets. The only thought that mattered now was that he had a son who deserved better than the mistakes of his father. He heard a soft voice behind him. "You can come back in if you like." Vivian stood in the doorway, hair disheveled, exhaustion etched on her face, yet she radiated a quiet strength. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice almost trembling. She nodded. "This baby is ours, and I want him to know his father, even if—" Her voice trailed off. Perhaps she was thinking of what the future would hold for them. Would they remain separated forever? Or was there a glimmer of reconciliation? Nicholas followed her inside the weight of the world, feeling just a bit lighter than before. He took a seat next to Vivian, watching their son's tiny chest rise and fall. The child's eyes fluttered, taking in the world for the first time. In that shared silence, father and mother, once broken by betrayal, found a fleeting moment of unity. No matter what the days ahead held, court hearings, settlement negotiations, or personal therapy sessions, this was a new beginning. It might not be a fairy tale ending, but it was real. It was honest. And perhaps for Nicholas and Vivian Harrington, that was a step closer to redemption than either had dared to hope. Thank you for joining us on this intense journey of passion, betrayal, and the fight for redemption. The tangled webs of Nicholas Harrington's life serve as a stark reminder that no amount of wealth or power can shield us from the consequences of our actions. From a hidden mistress and an extravagant private jet, to legal showdowns and a child's birth that changed everything. Our story reveals how trust once broken can take a lifetime to rebuild. Yet in the darkest moments, hope may still emerge if one chooses humility and honesty. If you found yourself on the edge of your seat, yearning to know what happens next in the Harrington saga, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more gripping stories to life. Stay tuned for our next riveting tale, because in the world of real-life drama fiction, there's always another twist around the corner.